Greetings everyone, my name is Etterville, and I welcome you all to my Let's Play of Mega Maker, a Mega Man Classic fan game where you can design and share your own Mega Man levels online. This was developed by WreckingPrograms and their team, and was released several hours ago. If anything, think of this as Super Mario Maker but for Mega Man instead of Mario. This was released to a lot of acclaim, and had a lot of press oncoming to its release. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to play some of the online levels in the first few days if there's too much network traffic. I may expect the network traffic to increase over time as more and more people learn about this title. Now, in this game you can create your own traditional Mega Man stage, a series of puzzle chambers, kaizo levels, automatic levels, and any other mix of levels just like Mario Maker. And on top of that, you can play any one of the many levels uploaded by other users, allowing you to create, curate, and customize your own Mega Man experience. And this game packs many features in order to achieve this. So the stage builder allows you to select from 46 enemies, 29 level objects, 12 bosses, and 24 special weapons, 40 backgrounds, 129 tile sets, 63 musical tracks, and a whole bunch of more. Plus there's a very good tutorial that'll explain all of the steps, just like in Mario Maker, so let's go through the tutorial first. I already set up my profile and whatnot, so let's see what the tutorial has to offer. Plus, just like Mario Maker, we also have the ability to rate other levels, controller support, and whatever else. So here's a tutorial given by Dr. Wily. Oh, and before I go on, this will be a semi-blind playthrough. What I mean by this is that I went through the tutorial at least once, or at least saw some videos on it, but I haven't played any of the example levels or online levels yet. Those will be played blind, so I apologize for any silly mistakes I make over there. I expect this to be a long-running series dependent on how many people continuously create and upload new Mega Man titles or levels online to the database. If this consistency holds like Mario Maker, expect to see this series will continue on as a side-running series for several months to come, maybe even a few years. That's a funny statement, Dr. Wily, but this game or this editor doesn't have all the enemies and feature sets of the previous Mega Man titles. Well, this game only really has the tile sets and features from Mega Man 1 and 6, but the developers have mentioned that they will add assets from Mega Man 7 onwards, probably also stuff from the Game Boy and Genesis titles. The Megamo 2 engine, aka Make a Good Mega Man Level 2 engine, that has almost all of the assets from Mega Man 1 through 6, so that'll be a bit more feature complete. That'll be a lot more feature complete compared to this one. And to be fair, Dr. Wily, several of your stages in the classic games weren't that good. Also, really digging the sprite art here, or the custom sprite art, especially of Dr. Wily's reactions to our comments and Dr. Light's comments. To be fair, this is kind of one of Dr. Wily's evil schemes, unless this is also a training program given by Dr. Light to train Mega Man of any of Wily's future schemes. I do like how much that this game actually ties into Mega Man lore of sorts, or at least fits or nails the characters down of Dr. Light and Dr. Wily. Also, as you may notice, I can also use the mouse in order to advance the dialogue, and I will be using the mouse almost exclusively for the editor because it makes editing stuff a lot easier. And yes, throughout my gameplay, and I will also demonstrate in a few videos how I design levels, I'll be explaining my level design ethos, and then you can better understand what I look for in Mega Man games, or Mega Man fan games, and levels. So we only have one basic level of terrain, just this one. This is the one from Cutman stage, I think. And then once we set the terrain, we can just press the check mark. Also, another nice thing is that it automatically creates the bottom terrain, as you see here, depending on how high it is, which I do like. And of course you can press and hold right click to delete terrain. In the Megamo 2 engine, or at least most Game Maker games, even if you set this, it wouldn't automatically readjust it, is what I'm saying. And you can't just create, okay, you can also create terrain that's just above, and it'll actually change which direction it's standing on, or set on, which I do like. Okay, let's pick Let me just delete some over here. Perfect, that looks good. But the stage is of course pretty empty because we only have the terrain. But that's usually the first thing I do when I design a level. First create the rough terrain and then populate it with gimmicks and enemies and other stuff. So here's the next thing. Now we can select all other things to add. This was the terrain, I suppose this is the background. This is where we place Mega Man, and these are the enemies, items, bosses. Alright, let's select some enemies. So we're gonna start off with only Mets, but that's fine. Let's put one about here, and one over here. And also very important, do not enemy spam. To be fair, enemy spam in certain contexts is fine, like for certain challenges where you're forced to use special weapons or you really want to encourage usage of special weapons. But if you do resort to a lot of enemies, make sure that you don't split the attention of the player too much by including a lot of other hazards and difficult to navigate terrain. Use with care, but that's true for most game elements of Mega Man. But be careful, but remember always, different players have different perspectives and different expectations of levels. Some characters or some players don't really mind enemy spam as much as others, and different people have different ideas of what constitutes enemy spam, spike abuse, etc. So let's try selecting a new type of enemy. As you can see here, we can select enemies from the first 6 Mega Man classic games. Of course, like I said, there are only, let me see here, 46 enemies, but not all enemies from each game are there, so we gotta be a bit there. Like for example, we don't have the Sniper Joe armors from Mega Man 2, unfortunately. Or the Tackle Fires from Mega Man 1. Or the Hotheads either. Well, we do have the Hotheads, never mind. So let's see here. Let's stick with Mega Man 1 and pick the beaks. So let's put it over here. And of course we can also select which direction it's pointing, like we can select it so it's rotated upwards or downwards. And we can change its color from a variety of palettes. I suppose the palette color will be different depending on what enemy type there is. Well, let's pick blue. That isn't really that much effort because we only have one screen, and normally in a Mega Man title, I wouldn't usually put this many enemies with this type of terrain unless this was at least halfway through the level or past the first few screens. That's true, but we gotta be cautious we don't want to overuse it to make the player's life too easy. So let's pick a gimmick now. Or pick a level object. We can choose from pickups, general, and all the unique gimmicks from Mega Man 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just so I can be nice to the player, and just for example, I'll just put a large life energy over there. And of course we also have the count bombs, which for some reason are in the general. I think these are where I think those are the checkpoints, or whatever they're called. We'll probably need more I'll probably need to go through each of the items and see what they exactly do. And just for fun, I'm going to put a spring down somewhere. Let's put a spring over here just for fun. This stage is too compressed, Dr. Wily. That's also another important thing. In most Mega Man games, and good fan games, gimmicks and enemies are introduced in a relatively safe environment before they're combined with other gimmicks. That way the player can get used to the gimmick usage, enemy usage, and whatnot. Otherwise, players don't know what to do with the enemies and they may get frustrated with the sudden introduction. Although, you have to be a bit cautious depending on how the level is, Because if it's like a fortress stage, or designed to be like a fortress stage, there's an expectation that the player should know what these gimmicks are already, so you don't need to reintroduce it there. But it's always safe to at least introduce enemies in a relatively safe environment. Enemies, gimmicks, hazards, whatever else. Always try avoiding unfair deaths as much as possible in these platformer games. So let's try placing a background now. Thankfully, placing backgrounds in this game is a lot easier than it was in Fangame 2, although it's a lot less flexible because it's out of the 40 backgrounds we have here, they're always dependent on the level itself. So I don't think you can actually just combine backgrounds together, or place background tiles piece by piece, but I suppose that's to reduce server strain and whatnot. So here we have Gutsman's background. Yeah, and also, all of the advice that Dr. Light and Dr. Wily are giving are really pertinent to a lot of Mega Man fan games and fan games in general. Proper usage of gimmicks and enemies, introducing them in a nice fashion to prevent unfair deaths and damage, a careful usage of all the gimmicks so that they're varied but not overly dependent for using them, and how much a background and tiles they can add to the gameplay. The next thing will probably be music. Of course, we also have lasers and ladders and death spikes. Also, don't abuse instant death spikes. When I designed my level in Fangame 2, that being Conveyor Madness or Conveyor Mayhem, I made sure to make the death spikes non-instant death spikes and instead do a truckload of damage. That's true, but this is also dependent on the number of checkpoints you place in the level itself. If there are a lot more checkpoints in between each of the challenges in the level, it's fine to add more death spikes. So let's now place the ladders and whatnot. I also realized that the terrain is a little bit floating here, but that'll be fixed when I officially design my level. Also, we have a long selection of different types of ladders depending on which Mega Man game we have. Quite surprising, it's quite interesting to see how many different ladders that the developers of Mega Man did for each of their games. Same with the spikes actually. Look at all the variety of spikes that we have. We can also mix and match them to create a interesting effect. But I suppose it'd be kind of odd if we saw so many different types of spikes right next to each other. Let's put Plantman's ladder over here. Just for fun, but of course this is not really a good game design, but I'm just showing it just for the sake of this gameplay, or just for the sake of this tutorial. I've noticed that we can't actually place a ladder right behind an enemy, which is kind of unfortunate. But I also find it interesting that we can place the multiple types of spikes in ladders, but not multiple types of backgrounds. But I suppose this was done to save up the server space, so we don't need to retile the background just like we retile the foreground, or level objects. That is possible in Fangame 2, but that makes it a lot easier to screw up because you can have a lot more sprite layers and background and foreground layers. And I didn't put any death spikes here because I'm trying to make this like the first or second or the first few screens of the level. And the most important part after you're done with actually making the level terrain is to place Mega Man himself into the level. As usual, I'll place him on the bottom left part of the screen. Usually I would put him in the middle part of the screen, but because this tutorial is forcing me to make a compressed level, I'll place him here. And of course we can switch which direction he starts out at, or starts facing. Good, Dr. Wily says that we can finally increase the size of the level. I can use the arrow keys on the keyboard to move the camera. You can use the WASD keys, or use the middle mouse button. Okay, here's the arrow keys, middle mouse button, and WASD. For quick movement, I'm probably going to be using the middle mouse or the arrow keys or WASD, but if I want to do more precise moving, I'll probably use the middle mouse button. And the new screens are darker than the other ones to illustrate that if we push into them, they'll be added. So let's place terrain in a new section so we can actually add the screen. So we can add new terrain, we can add new stuff to the top of the screen, top right, right, bottom, and bottom. We can't add stuff to the left though. Okay, let's add terrain. Oh, wait a minute. Can I do something like this? Oh good, it also connects the terrain as expected. Nice! The editor is rather intelligent. That should make making these level design or making levels a lot easier and convenient instead of the developers having to manually create all of these or manually place all these tiles and be careful that they all fit. And of course, this button indicates whether the screens are disconnected or the screen automatically scrolls to the right. This means that they're disconnected, or this means that these are connected, so it'll automatically scroll to the right if we go to this point, and this means that it'll be disconnected, so if we reach this barrier, it'll automatically scroll. Let's make it the same for now. Yeah, it makes sure that the sections are connected if not, or not. And by default, sections are connected horizontally but not vertically. And vertical sections weren't present in most Mega Man classic games outside of, I think, starting from Mega Man 7. So I do like they put the option there. And I realize now that I can actually add a background to a separate background to each part of the screen, so it is a bit more flexible. And also, in order to do an upward screen transition, we actually need to be on a ladder. We cannot be taken upwards by a Sparkman platform, unfortunately. Also, they finally introduced that you can delete level objects by holding down the right mouse button. They probably should have introduced that first, or second. And we can end off any of these levels with bosses if we really want to. And we can also end off levels with energy elements or party balls. And of course, it's suggested that you have a separate screen for the boss fights, but that's not necessary. I don't think so. I don't think it's really necessary, or it's not mandatory, I mean. And we can also change out the boss weaknesses by just selecting them, so we can end up like changing the weakness of Fireman from being the Ice Slasher and make it something else. I mean the other way around, sorry. So let's create a boss arena. But before we do that, let's actually put the boss doors in and whatnot. What I mean is we probably should create the terrain here, finish it, then go. I know this is kind of a simple looking level, but it works. Let's place an enemy over here. Put one over here, face it this way. And I'll put one last enemy over here to finish the job. I'll just put a regular mat over here. Let's see if I can figure out where the boss doors are. Apparently not. Okay, let's put Cutman. Oh, okay, I got an error there. Okay. Game crashed. I didn't expect that. I got an index out of range error. Alright, I'm back. Sorry about that crash. After all, this is a fan game, so there may be some bugs here and there, even though this is version 1.0.0. For some reason, when I scrolled off the screen over there, it caused an error where I got out of the index or something. So I recreated this level with some changes here and there. And I have the boss arena over here, and we have Bomb Man as the boss. I didn't realize this, and as an earlier correction to my earlier statement, we can actually mix and match tile sets, which we already could before, but in addition to that, each screen can have its own background. Unfortunately, or fortunately, each screen can only be... It's only going to be it's going to be the same as the NES dimensions of the rooms, or each room can only be the same as the default. It's not like in Megamel 1 or 2 where each room size could be different. aka you can have non-square shaped rooms and whatnot. But here you're forced to. Okay, here's a nice simple level. I have the boss room and everything, and here's the boss. Plus, you can also configure the boss's weakness as well. Like here I set it to be the Mega Buster, but in the final game, or in the other game when I get access to all special weapons, I can set it to be that particular special weapon. I can also set it to be immune to some. I set it to be immune to a certain weapon, like the Mega Buster or whatnot. I can also set the Robot Master of music, like Mega Man 1, Mega Man 2, Mega Man 3, Mega Man 4, Mega Man 5, 6, the Wily Boss teams. Unfortunately, there isn't one for 2. I'll set it to 2. I always preferred it over 1. Also, I really like the remix of the Ruined City team from Mega Man 7. That should be good. But of course, there are 3 more things on the top left part of the screen that we haven't taken care of yet. So we can change our level's name, buster, charging, sliding, and even background settings, or even background color. AK, right now it's a default blue, but we can set it to something else. We can also change what the charge type is. We can set it to be like Mega Man 4, which is never cancelled out, but it's smaller. Mega Man 5, where it's not cancelled out, but it's the strongest. I'll keep it on that one. And Mega Man 6, where it's a bit nerfed, and you can be knocked out of it if you take damage, but it's still pretty nice. And we can change the background color if we really want it to be darker. We can even set it to be white if we really wanted to. Let me set it to a lighter color. Also, I should probably change the level name. And it seems like we can set it to be a pretty long name as well. So no short names, thankfully, or no being limited to short names. Oh, wonderful. We can also choose which special weapons Mega Man will have access to, or the player, so we can have we have a choice between all from Mega Man 1 to 6, and some other weapons like the Shine and NATO. And utilities as well. As usual, I'll add the Rush Coil. Also, as another important note is the first weapon you put over here, the player will have infinite ammo. You can also potentially give the player no weapons at all. And in that case, it'll just be a dodge fest where players have to just dodge enemies, or perhaps use their enemy weapons against themselves. I foresee some unique challenge stages where you have no weapon and Mega Man has to run through like in a forced pacifist fashion, waiting for enemies to open up and then pass through them. I would like it if there was a feature to actually set it so that multiple special weapons can have infinite ammo, instead of just the first one. So I'm going to give, for example, Mega Buster, Thunder Beam. We also have Metal Blade, but yeah, I'll put that there just for the sake of that. And of course, some of the special weapons were upgraded, so they're more useful. I'll just give 3 special weapons for now. This music icon, of course, changes what background music we'll have for the stage. We even have 8-bit remixes of Time Man and Oil Man stages from Mega Man Super Powered Up. But of course, I'll keep it to the classic. Okay, we have it from Mega Man 1 to 6. Probably in the future we'll have Genesis remixes and Mega Man 7, 8, 9, 10, etc. For now, I'll keep it with Bomb Man. Last thing to do is always save the stage. Save often, save frequently, just in case your game crashes like I did. And now, in order to play the stage, just press the play button. So let's play my test stage. Of course, as you saw over there, Mega Man can jump, shoot, slide, and he can do charge shots. And of course, you can change whether he can slide and what kind of charge shots he has. And of course, this is Mega Man 5 style, so my charge shot isn't knocked out. Everything feels about correct, and the physics seem alright. Although there's one thing I would like to change to be added. As you may have noticed, I can enter and I can scroll back through screens easily. I would have liked the feature where you can prevent players from actually scrolling back on screen or going back a screen so that the players don't take force damage and whatnot. Also, we have things like of course we have the Thunder Beam, Metal Blade, just like with Select. I also like that the enemies flash white when we hit them. It's always a nice show that you're actually dealing damage, and I like it better than the enemies just temporarily turning transparent every so often. Alright, on to the boss. Also, I forgot to put the boss doors on the left part of the screen. I do like the game actually gives you the option to not put the boss doors over there. If there was one other thing I wanted the game to actually have, it would be that, well, you can actually edit how weak bosses are to your special weapons. Because it seems that if I shoot the enemy, they take 3 points of damage from their primary weakness. I would have liked it so you can edit it so it's like 2, 3, or 4, depending on which weapon it is. Then again, having that much granularity and control would probably make it a bit too confusing for the newer level designers. And I suppose that's better suited for future updates, an advanced editor, or stuff like Megamo 1 and Megamo 2. And thus I created my first level in Mega Maker, although I've created several levels in other Mega Man engines. You're welcome, Dr. Wily, or rather should I say WreckingPrograms and their team, not to mention anyone else who was there. This game has been in development since September 2016, starting out as a one-person project and became larger and larger. It was built using the Mega Engine, which was a Mega Man engine in Game Maker that was also created by WreckingPrograms. This game will not be finished yet. There's a lot of other features to be added, like the different tile sets, like from Genesis, maybe 8-bit versions of Mega Man 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe even the Game Boy games. And perhaps maybe it'll take another feature from Mega Maker and make it so that you can actually choose which level aesthetics or game aesthetics to use. Like right now we're forced into using the Mega Man 8-bit classic aesthetic, but maybe in the future we'll have access to the Game Boy aesthetic, the retro remix, or the Genesis version, the Game Boy, maybe even Mega Man 7, who knows. I'm looking forward to what other level designers will create. And of course I've created the long tutorial. It was nice and detailed, and quite well explained all the features of the engine. Although, you'll need to spend a lot more time figuring out how each of the enemy configurations and hazards work in the final game, and see how they work in a final level combined. And this is a good point to end off this part. After all, the tutorials took about 30 minutes. So in the next part, I'll be trying out some of the sample levels that were provided in this level designer. I really look forward to playing some of those sample levels and many of the other levels that players will cook up in the future. I can imagine a mix of kaizo levels, really difficult challenges, some unique level design gimmicks, auto-playing levels, musical levels, etc, etc, just like in Mario Maker. Although this game isn't as flexible as Mario Maker in several fashions, it's just flexible enough for a lot of level designers in the Mega Man fan community to get their feet wet and actually design levels. It's sufficient for a lot of circumstances for creating levels, after all. I would like a little more customizability in the future, but I suppose that's for future updates or for other engines. As I've repeatedly stated in other comments in other places in social media, I feel that Mega Maker combined with the Megamo 2 engine will do wonders for the Mega Man level design and fan community. Now it'll be much easier to create fan levels and fan games without having to worry about designing the engine and nailing down the physics. Now players can actually focus most of their attention on creating levels themselves, instead of working on the engine stability. Now the engine stability can be an extra stuff for people who want to add extra features, like in Megamo 2. But now people aren't pigeonholed into creating or working on the engine, making it stable first before adding the enemies, level obstacles, and then working on the level design itself. Now players can work on the level design itself. I know I'm repeating myself quite often here, but I can't state this enough. This has been quite a recurring problem I noticed in Mega Man fan games, where they spend so much time making the engine relatively stable, adding all the level gimmicks, enemies, backgrounds, etc., that they don't have enough time or effort or whatever else left over for actually making good level design. Now with this and Megamo 2, Megamo 1, and whatever else, players can spend more time building the levels of their dream and actually make them good. After all, I've been finding more often than not that execution is a lot more important than the ideas themselves. But there's also another important good flip side to that. There are a lot of good ideas, but there are infinitely more bad ideas, or bad executions, I mean. What I mean is, though, there are a lot of creative ideas players can want to exercise, but it'll take a lot of practice to make them be executed better. Don't discount a gimmick or enemy if they've been executed in many bad fashions. But I look forward to playing a lot of the stages in the future parts. I expect this to be a long-running series, and I hope that this game will continue to have a small but dedicated community. Maybe not small, but at least a dedicated community to continuously add levels throughout the game. Well then, thanks for watching and have a nice day. Toodles!